Coming up on The World Today. Human rights campaigners of Belarus, Russia and Ukraine win Nobel Peace Prize. European Union leaders arrive at Prague summit to discuss energy and cost of living. And grief and shock in Thailand after mass killing of mostly children. A warm welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. We begin with the Nobel Peace Prize, which has been awarded to one individual and two organizations. Alice Bialetsky, a human rights advocate from Belarus, takes the award along with Russian human rights organization Memorial and the Ukrainian human rights organization, the Center for Civil Liberties. The chair of the Nobel Committee says the winners demonstrate the significance of civil society for peace and democracy, showing the importance of the right to criticize power and protect the fundamental rights of citizens.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2022 to one individual and two organizations. The Peace Prize laureates represent civil society in their home countries. They have for many years promoted the right to criticize power and protect the fundamental rights of citizens. They have made an outstanding effort to document war crimes, human rights abuses, and the abuse of power. Together, they demonstrate the significance of civil society for peace and democracy. This year's Peace Prize is awarded to human rights advocate Alice Bialetsky from Belarus, the Russian human rights organization Memorial, and the Ukrainian human rights organization Center for Civil Liberties.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's human rights campaigners said they were in a delightful shock after learning they were among co-winners of the Nobel Peace Prize. The prize will be seen by many as a commendation of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is celebrating his 70th birthday today, and Belarus's President Alexander Lukashenko, making it one of the most politically contentious in decades. The award, the first since Russia's February 24 invasion of Ukraine, has echoes of the Cold War era when prominent Soviet dissidents such as Andrei Shahakov and Alexander Slushetskin won Nobels for Peace or Literature. Now, let's take a listen to the phone call between the Center for Civil Liberties and Norwegian Nobel Committee's Olav Jolstad minutes prior to the public announcement of the Nobel Peace Prize award. The Executive Director of Ukraine Center for Civil Liberties, Alexandra Romantsova, says winning the award was incredible.
Hello?
Yes, hello. Is this Mrs. Romantsova?
Yeah, Alexandra Romantsova, it's me. Hello.
Yes, hello. I am Olav Njølstad, the director of the Norwegian Nobel Institute in Oslo.
Yes.
And I'm calling you on behalf of the Norwegian Nobel Committee to inform you that in a very few minutes it will be announced here from the Nobel Institute that the Center for Civil Liberties will be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for 2022, together with another human rights organization and one individual. So congratulations to you.
Oh, it's okay. It's it's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you are happy with this information.
Because for us, for your understanding, we have even joint project. We explain people Nobel Prize previous years, what exactly why people accept was awarded for some prize about peace working. Like for example, from 2018, I make lecture about Nadim Murad and Denis Mukwege and all other. So it's for us, it's really important, like a part of Ukrainian society culture to understand what that means, and so it's really great. Thank you.
You won't believe it, but it's day 226 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We understand that satellite images in terms of the aftermath of Thursday's missile strike showed gapping a rubble-strewn hole where a multi-story residential block used to stand. According to the regional governor, Alexander Starok, the death toll after the Russian missile strikes on Ukraine's southern city of Zaporizhia this morning has risen to 7. He adds that at least 5 people are still considered missing, and efforts to determine the exact number of dead and injured are continuing. He thanked the prompt work of special services, rescuers and doctors, which made it possible to save 21 people. He stressed that the firing of S-300 air defense missiles, which Russia has used increasingly to attack civilian and other targets in Ukraine, was a real act of terrorism. And the United States has accused Russian mercenaries of exploiting natural resources in the Central African Republic, Mali, Sudan and elsewhere to help Moscow fund its war in Ukraine, a charge that Russia has rejected as anti-Russian rage. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said the Wagner group of mercenaries are exploiting natural resources and the gains are used to fund Moscow's war machine in Africa, the Middle East and Ukraine. Ms. Thomas-Greenfield was speaking at a UN Security Council meeting on the financing of armed groups through the illicit trafficking of natural resources in Africa. However, Russian UN Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia said he regretted that Ms. Thomas-Greenfield had raised the issue of Russian support to African partners.
One of the most immediate and growing concerns in Africa is the Kremlin-backed Wagner Group's strategy of exploiting the natural resources of the Central African Republic, Mali and Sudan, as well as other countries. These actions are thoroughly documented and irrefutable, and we know these ill-gotten gains are used to fund Moscow's war machine in Africa, the Middle East, and Ukraine. And rather than being a transparent partner and improving security, Wagner exploits client states who pay for their heavy-handed security services in gold, diamond, timber, and other natural resources. This is part of Wagner Group's business model. Make no mistake, people across Africa are paying a heavy price for the Wagner Group's exploitative practices and human rights violations.
Mr. President, in conclusion, I would like to express our regret that the United States, in their anti-Russian rage, have reached the point where, in their statement, put the issue to the forefront of Russian support to its African partners. This exposes their real plans and aims. What they really need from African countries. We're surprised by the words of the permanent representative of the United States when she's talking about client states. That's American terminology. We do not use that. For us, the African countries are not clients. They are partners. I'd like to recall here, by the way, that in Syria, the United States, under the cover of counterterrorism, are stealing Syrian oil before an untrustworthy company was appointed for that. And then, when the situation seemed too scandalous, even to its allies, the United States returned to stealing Syrian national resources using their own military.
Well, to talk some more about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, joining us is Anna Chernikova from Kyiv. Hi, Anna. It's good to see you. And I must say, congratulations. Talking about, you know, the Center for Civil Liberties, human rights organization that has co-won the Nobel Peace Prize. How is Kyiv reacting?
Great news today, and of course, Ukrainian society, Ukrainian government, everyone congratulated already the guys who achieved that award. However, Ukrainian officials made it quite clear that actually Ukrainians got this prize together with Russian a little bit, you know, not logical, while Russia and Belarus, well, Russia mostly, but Belarus very actively supporting Russia in this war. So, of course, for Ukraine, it looks a little bit not, you know, not quite correct, let's put it this way. But again, in Ukraine, like here, people are dividing this, you know, to two cases that and concentrating more on the fact that Ukrainians actually won the prize. But again, I should say it was well, it is quite a big deal, both in the society and in the official environment as well, that this prize actually was divided between the three countries.
All right, and give us an update on the missile strike attack, which we had yesterday, and then the aftermath of today, the southern city of Zaporizhia.
Yeah, unfortunately, the city of Zaporizhia itself is under very high risk and under very intensive attacks for the past weeks, I should say, but especially this couple of days. And I just would like to mention that the city of Zaporizhia is a so-called, you know, a certain hub now for internally displaced Ukrainians from Kherson region, Donetsk region, from the city of Mariupol, from the city of Kherson itself, and the Zaporizhia region, which is under occupation. So the city of Zaporizhia is a concentration of civilians who lost their homes or had to escape their homes because the territory is occupied, and also humanitarian organizations, including Ukrainian and international. So attacks on the city of Zaporizhia create this high risk for, first of all, for the civilians. And what we see in this past days, that actually civilian and residential areas in particular, and civilians are under attack mostly, including infrastructure. So we can say that for this yesterday attack caused the death of at least 11 people, and another 15 are still under the rubble. They're still missing. So we're still waiting for the confirmation on their on the situation with them. Today's attack killed one person. This is what we know for the moment. But again, it was also targeted to the residential building. Also, we are hearing that actually today, late in the afternoon, it was a very bad shelling of the city of Enerhodar, which is just around 120 kilometers away from the city of Zaporizhia, and it is under Russian control for the moment, and this is the home for the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. And we were hearing that Russian forces were shelling the city, that caused electricity shortage and blackout and water shortage. Again, this was announced by the officials, by the local officials of the city of Enerhodar. So I should say this area, the Zaporizhia city itself and the Zaporizhia region, is pretty much under quite a bad shelling alert and shelling risk for the moment. A lot of shellings are happening, not only missile strikes, but also drone attacks.
And we understand that 4-member team of the UN nuclear inspectors are due to arrive at the plant today. And many wonder how far this is. The strike is happening to the plant. I'm also certain you're aware US President has compared the threat of nuclear war now, saying that the risk is near Armageddon, one that they haven't seen since 60 years ago.
Well, actually, the rotation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has already happened. It was confirmed by Mr. Grossi, and International Atomic Energy Agency Twitter account announced that. It's definitely, well, a good sign, of course, and everyone is hoping that that this would lead to certain nuclear safety and demilitarization of this zone. But the attacks that are happening on the city of Zaporizhzhia, as I already said, it's like 120 kilometers away from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. But also the city of Enerhodar in particular is also under the shelling, and not that often as Zaporizhzhia, but again, quite often. And of course, this is quite a big risk, and we should remember that the plant itself remains in a very risky zone. So this is basically a fighting zone. Well, not fighting, it's not the correct way to say, but it's a shelling zone, let's put it this way. And unfortunately, this is a problem that should be solved by Ukraine and international society, and of course, International Atomic Energy Agency is doing a lot for this. If we're talking about the Mr. Biden's comment, well, President Zelensky himself also mentioned that, well, in his speech he mentioned that what's happening today in Ukraine is something that Europe and the world haven't seen since the Second World War. And this is what Ukrainian officials continue to repeat again and again. And we all understand that, of course, this war is unfortunately something that neither Europe nor the world wanted to happen again. Ukraine takes very seriously nuclear comments by President Putin and Russian officials. Of course, intelligence, both Ukrainian and international, and US in particular, say that they don't see particular signs of preparation for for the use of nuclear weapons, but Ukraine takes this kind of comments very seriously. But of course, everyone hopes that this is not gonna be realized.
Finally, Anna, regardless of what's going on, I mean, this is a war front. We still understand that Ukraine is advancing into Kherson region.
Yes, this is correct. Actually, Ukrainian officials, military officials in particular, were very silent about any announcement of any results in this area, and they continue to be very careful with confirmation of certain advances due to security reasons. But when the area is cleared, actually we get this announcement and confirmation. So for the moment, what I can say that in this past week, starting from October 1st, Ukrainian forces managed to liberate 29 settlements in Kherson region, which is something like 400 square kilometers of the territory, which is quite big. And of course, this is a very positive impulse of the Ukrainian forces. American officials, US officials, also confirmed that, saying that actually Ukrainians have this impulse that they should use in order to continue their advance. President Zelensky confirmed that counteroffensive actions are continuing in this area, and that we might hear sooner or later, but we might hear new confirmations regarding the advance. Anyway, for the moment, Ukrainian forces are quite successful in that area indeed.
Anna, we always appreciate your time on the program. Continue to stay safe. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And leading the EU summit in Prague is Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Divisions between European Union leaders over capping gas prices and national rescue packages resurfaced to discuss how best to deal with a winter energy crunch caused by the war. 15 EU states want a price cap on gas but do not agree on the details of how it should be done. Germany, Denmark and the Netherlands oppose any cap, worried that it would make it difficult to buy the gas they need to keep their economies running and dampen any incentive to reduce consumption.
A price cap on gas if that could be achieved, would be grand, with the caveat that we cannot endanger security of supply. So we cannot set the price so that no one would sell gas into Europe. But if on a European level it could be arranged so that it would keep the gas flowing but keep the prices lower, this is the goal.
First of all, we have to build very credible deterrence that Kremlin's regime does not want to test our ability to respond. So deterrence, deterrence, and once more deterrence. And we have to be strong and not to let us manipulate, because the Kremlin's regime is very good in that.
I will ask the leaders to support the proposal for a new tranche for the European Peace Facility to continue providing military support to Ukraine, also to the training mission. I hope that for the next Foreign Affairs Council we will have a proposal on both things.
I have proposed in the March communication already the discussion about a wholesale cap. At that time it did not get traction, but now we are better prepared. The situation has evolved and therefore member states are willing to discuss now the price caps. As I said, the where and the how will be discussed, so I'm confident that we will come to a good conclusion.
Well, Germany must stay united with European partners on energy policy. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said this today as he arrived for the second day of the Union in Prague. Speaking at the opening, he said the energy policy must not be dictated by Germany, but must serve the interest of all countries. The prices, energy prices in Europe have soared to record levels in recent months, driven by Russia slashing gas supplies to Europe following its invasion. 27 member states of the EU, 17 other countries, including several waiting to join the bloc, and the only one ever to leave it, the UK, discussing the new geopolitical context.
My message to Germany is be united with, or be solidar with all the others, because during difficult times everybody has to agree on common denominator and not this denominator which is suitable only to one country.
Well, the forum is indeed the brainchild of Emmanuel Macron, and it is intended to promote greater coordination and response to Russia's war in Ukraine. To also, critics rather fear that that particular group is unwieldy, with members saying that it is as diverse as the EU, the UK, Turkey, and countries like Azerbaijan and Armenia. Well, to throw more light on this, Stephen Beardsley, Deutsche Welle correspondent, joins me from Berlin. Stephen, talk to us about the highlights of this meeting with the EPC.
Well, if you look at it, formally, nothing really. There was no statement, there was no communique. However, there was a picture of the leaders of 43 nations standing together on a stage. It would have been 44, but in this case, the Danish Prime Minister had to call off his participation due to some work at home. So in this sense, I mean, just by virtue of that photo, it can be seen as something of a success for Emmanuel Macron. At least that's how he painted it as well. Macron, whose brainchild this was, saying after the meeting that we displayed unity and expressed condemnation of Russia's war and support for Ukraine. Now, that has been the big question, is what this group would be able to show together. We knew that there were some expressions beforehand from different nations about their uncertainty about what it would do, and that they were afraid that it might overlap or overstep the role of the EU, for example, or NATO. The EU also said clearly that that this should be about political dialogue and cooperations on areas such as security, energy, climate issues, and that it wouldn't replace any other organization. So everyone trying to get out ahead of this meeting and say, look, this is a great chance to point to European unity, but we have to be careful to point out that this does not replace anything that's already there.
And Stephen, there are a number of storylines in this, from the war in Ukraine to energy prices to living crisis. But what really sticks out with this engagement?
Now, obviously, that common message here was against the war in Ukraine and a general condemnation of Russia just by virtue of being there. That's what the nations seem to suggest, is that they all had this in common, even though there was no official statement released at the end. There were several meetings on the sidelines which were of interest to anyone watching. Perhaps first among those, the meeting of the heads of Azerbaijan and Armenia with Macron to discuss their disputed border. Coming out of that is an agreement to have peacekeepers policing that disputed border between the two nations for the next 2 months. That is something. Also a meeting between Macron and UK Prime Minister Liz Truss. You may remember several months ago, Liz Truss famously saying that she wasn't sure if Macron was, quote, friend or foe yet, that the jury was still out on that. A pretty remarkable statement for two leaders in Europe, two leading nations in Europe. Liz Truss clarified yesterday that Macron is a friend. And now Truss, we should mention, needs to really raise her stature on the international level, because back home things aren't looking so good with the way things are going with the economy right now, especially after her recent economic policy plans that she released and the collapse of the pound. So this was an important meeting for her, and we saw that yesterday. There was, however, also a flash of tensions that we saw in the meeting, and that was when Turkey made some not-so-veiled threats toward Greece about their dispute over tensions there, or land dispute, I should say. And this, again, points to sort of the disparate nation of the goals of some 44 nations and one of the inherent problems in this group.
And Stephen, what kind of ambitions can we expect from the European political community? And this is the group, the EPC, moving ahead.
That's absolutely the question going forward. And think about this, 44 nations, again, stretching all the way from Iceland in the northwest to Cyprus in the southeast. They have all sorts of different borders. They have all sorts of different issues when it comes to energy security. So that is the question moving forward. Will they have a common budget? Will they have a common focus that would be put down on paper? Is this anything more than just a prestige project of Emmanuel Macron? Can it exist outside of the shadow of the war in Ukraine? So this will be the question. For right now, it is a nice photo op, and there are plans to have another meeting, however, in Moldova in the spring, and then there are also plans for future meetings in Spain and Britain, the idea being to switch from EU nation to non-EU nation. So again, I think this is really going to be more important for smaller nations in Europe, especially those who aren't EU members, who perhaps aren't NATO members as well, but are looking to accelerate their admission into both of those organizations, which are far more important. And for the other nations, it's going to be important to differentiate this from both of those vehicles, which again are far more important to them, the EU and NATO. But right now, I think Macron can point to this and say, look, success, we were all there, we all showed common purpose.
Thanks again, Stephen Biertz, the Deutsche Welle correspondent for us there. Well, Germany closed its 2 natural gas receiving terminals of Nord Stream project. Germany closed its 2 natural gas receiving terminals of Nord Stream project located in Lubmin city and beefed up security checks around the area. The 2 receiving terminals of Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 pipelines are about 2 kilometers away from each other, and an information center modified from a container sits between the 2 terminals. Video of the China media group shows that the information center is surrounded by weeds, indicating long-time desert. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline was completed last year and all facilities are new. It was closed before actually started operation. CMG reporter found the two terminals have strict security checks and outsiders are not allowed to approach. The Nord Stream pipeline's leakage on the Baltic Sea has become a headline-making event. The crack and leakage problems emerged when the pressure in the pipes plummeted September 26. Later, Swedish and Danish authorities filmed vast areas where signs of gas streaming from the holes are visible on the Baltic Sea surface. Two of the leaks are in Sweden's exclusive economic zone, the EEZ, in the Baltic Sea, and two in Denmark's EEZ. And over to Thailand, where families of at least 38 people, including 24 children, killed in a mass shooting at a childcare center northeast of the country, are still grieving. Police identify the attacker as a former police officer who was arrested early this year over drug allegations and was dismissed from his post in June. National Police Chief Dromansak told a press conference hours after the incident he was supposed to face trial on drug charges in court today. When the attacker intruded into the childcare center, he was suspected to be under the influence of drugs and stress due to the upcoming trial. The number of the victims included the shooter and his family members who were found dead in his home, the police said, without mentioning the number of the injured in the incident. Meanwhile, the Thai Prime Minister has ordered all government departments to fly the national flag at half-mast today. He also arrived in the northeast city, Nong Bua Lumphu province, to hand out oversized compensation checks to relatives of the slain daycare center victims. Speaking in a microphone while giving out the large cardboard checks printed with figures ranging from 110,000 to 200,000 Thai baht, that's about 2,942 US dollars to 5,350 US dollars. He also hugged dozens of people in a crowded hall. The nation mourning the death of more than 30 people, including 23 children, after the ex-policeman burst into a daycare center. Elsewhere, community members in the central Californian city of Merced gathered in a downtown park yesterday evening to pay their respects and hold a vigil for the family who were found dead in a rural area after being kidnapped this week. The victims were identified as the baby Aruhi Deheri, who was abducted along with her mother, Jaslene Kaur, 27, her father, Jasdeep Singh, 36, and the baby's uncle, Amdeep Singh, 39. Police say the four were abducted Monday morning from the family's trucking company in Merced, about 150 miles east of San Jose. Hundreds of community members turned out to support the family. They brought flowers, stuffed animals, and lit and laid candles for the vigil. Sukhdeep Singh, a cousin of the victims, thanked everyone for coming and said he hoped that the vigil would help prevent similar events in the future. Religious leaders from various churches, congregations took turns offering prayers for their family and the community.
For all of those who are cousins and all of those who... Our family just lost 4 precious family souls today. Now we all shudder. We don't have words to say. I just want to pray. All of you guys are here. Thank you for coming, and this candlelight probably help this incident, this nightmare won't happen to anyone in the whole world. That's what I pray. Amen.
It's a very, very sad day, but in that sadness, I just don't want to forget 4 names: Aruhi, Jocelyn, Jasdeep, and Amandeep. These names will become synonymous with our love and affection. We will be thinking about them every day. And today, as I look out, as far as I can see, I see the community coming together and being with us. All of us are together. I do not have anything more than to say that all the pastors and the priests have said. This shows unity, this shows compassion, this shows strength.
Still more crime stories. A fight between 2 rival gangs in the violence-plagued southwestern state of Guerrero left 20 dead, including a local mayor, and 2 more wounded. Among those shot dead in San Miguel's town hall October 5th, where the mayor, his father, former mayor Juan Mendoza, and other local officials. A minor was also among those killed, according to authorities. Deputy Security Minister Media said it happened within the context of a dispute between criminal gangs, adding that organized crime groups La Familia, Machucana, and Los Tequileros appear to be involved. Guerrero is an important heroin-producing state. The governor, Evelyn Salgado, said in a news conference the incident was a clear reflection of the social decomposition, she says, they have inherited, promising to crack down on crime in the state. And to the weather. Heavy rains and overflowing of rivers in the Venezuelan city of Maracay, located in the north-central state of Aragua, have led to floods. Eyewitness video shows a man in a canoe rowing in a flooded street. Several vehicles with water up to top of their tires are also seen driving along the road. The floods were made worse by the bad drainage system in the area. This according to local media. Belgium's foreign minister and 2 other lawmakers cut their hair in parliament in solidarity with anti-government demonstrations in Iran triggered by the death in police custody of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. Hejba Lebib sniped off a lock of her hair Thursday following the example of Deputy Daria Safir. Iranian-born Safir had taken scissors to hers to applause from other lawmakers after asking the minister about Belgium's response to a crackdown on widespread protests inside Iran. A third lawmaker, Godele Lekins, also cut her hair. Lebib, born in Belgium of Bulgarian parents, told Parliament that her government would ask the European Union to impose sanctions against architects of the crackdown when the bloc's foreign ministers meet later this month. Iran's clerical rulers have been battling to contain the most widespread unrest in years since Amini's death. Burkina Faso's military is warning the public not to circulate rumors and false information, and this is amid claims that France is working with unarmed army generals to remove new junta leader Captain Ibrahim Traoré from power. In a statement read on television, state run RTB TV by a military officer, the government is urging citizens to freely go on with their activities and to refrain from any rumors and misinformation, remaining true to the values of hospitality, tolerance and communal living. The Ministry of Communication also called the rumors unfounded and urged citizens to remain calm and distance themselves from misinformation and trust official channels. The warning comes after protests were held outside the state broadcaster, in which demonstrators accused army generals of planning to remove Captain Traoré. According to privately owned Radio Omega, there are rumors that a general in the army could replace him as head of state. Still in Africa, researchers in Uganda say the Ebola virus circulating in the country has mutated. According to the Uganda Virus Research Institute, there is, however, no evidence that it is any more transmissible than the original strain. They analyzed samples from the first known case to be tested during the current outbreak, which has now spread to 5 districts in central Uganda. So far, 44 cases have been reported and 10 people have died from the disease. Researchers tracking its spread say the genetic makeup of the virus looks similar to one responsible for another outbreak over a decade ago in the same region. South Africa's Women Economic Assembly has brought together private sector, businesswomen, government, civil society to talk women's inclusion and participation in the country's economic landscape. This initiative pushes for the participation of women-owned enterprises on the entire value chain to foster sustainable economic development. President Cyril Ramaphosa launched the Women Economic Assembly October 2021 in an effort to engage industry leaders to set gender transformation targets in each sector, implement existing commitments, and establish game-changing interventions that will increase procurement from women-owned businesses. Our correspondent Brian Fugeni files this report.
This year's theme for the Women Economic Assembly is Unlocking Gender-Responsive Value Chains for a Resilient Economy, with a focus on showcasing how the public and private sectors have implemented their commitment towards their gender transformation in industry value chains.
For too long, we've talked about women only as employees. We're changing that narrative, and we're saying that women are business owners. Women are entrepreneurs, and we're not living in a fantasy world when we say that, because women have already been entrepreneurs. They've just been dealing with an ecosystem that's been difficult to break through. Now Wikona is in the house, and we are busy breaking through those barriers to ensure that these women that own businesses are actually participating in the ecosystem.
Giving the keynote address, President Cyril Ramaphosa said the reason for starting the assembly was to improve the economic inclusion and participation of women and transform the economy. He also highlighted government's role in enabling that there are more women entrepreneurs in the country.
We are committed to using the policy and legislative tools at our disposal, such as employment equity and the other laws that outlaw discrimination, to improve women's representation in executive leadership and address the gender pay gap.
The United Nations states that globally 1 in 3 businesses is owned by women, but women only own 1% of procurement spent on large corporations. A panel discussion was done on how preferential procurement can help small firms achieve goals of equitable distribution of resources, enable sustainable development, and play a significant role in promoting gender equality and poverty reduction.
When it comes to procurement, I'm very pleased to report that last year we procured 8.5 billion rand of goods from women-owned businesses. These are businesses that are at least 30% and more owned by women. And we see this as a journey, not an end, until we reach a stage where the economy is fully and truly transformed in substance and in form.
What the NEF has done, we have a procurement finance product, because we realize that as and when these enterprises will be getting those opportunities from various players, within the South African economy, that you needed to have an entity that would be able to respond directly to that financing need.
We asked some of the participants their suggestions on how the picture can be improved.
If you apply the framework of Wikona effectively, it will literally bring an activity plan that will implement all these frameworks. And fortunately, as a country as well in South Africa, we are the signatories of these initiatives. And further down, it also makes sure that the private sector as well and the government fully understand how to implement the 40% procurement public policies by South African government.
We are in the digital world now, where you need to make sure that in terms of the systems and everything, you are also far ahead. But that is the challenge that we have as women. We cannot be at the forefront because we also need the funding to ensure that we build our own platforms, to ensure that we have the resources and the capacity and the support and collaboration from everyone to make sure that we succeed.
The launch of the Gender Impact Collaborative Fund, $20 billion or $1.2 billion for me is the highlight, like an umbrella fund. And we are saying the first quarter of 2023, come back, interview us, we'll tell you. Those ones that make commitment, what they have done, and how the money has been utilized, which sector, how many people have been employed, how many communities have been changed. That's what we are going to talk about.
Businesses from different sectors, together with government departments, pledged not only their support, but also resources and funds to the Women Economic Assembly in their continued initiatives to support women-owned businesses. From Pretoria, South Africa, Brian Pugeni, Channels Television News.
What appears to be a backward tradition is now making waves in Tunisia. A Tunisian artist, Manuel Madouani, is reviving the Berber language for new generations using Tattoos craft. Take a look.
Tunisian tattoo artist Manuel Madouani is reviving traditional Berber designs that had long been considered unfashionable, but are now gaining in popularity among a hip new generation. Few Tunisians now speak the Berber languages, more commonly found in Algeria and Morocco, and outward signs of Berber cultural identity are often relegated to motifs found on the handicrafts mass-produced for tourists.
I initially did usual tattoos. Then I said, why not specialize in something that makes a difference in the way I work? And I found that Amazigh tattoos are not so much common in Tunisia, and it is part of our heritage.
Among Tunisians, they were seen as symbols of an impoverished past, but some younger people are now becoming interested in their Berber roots and turn to 35-year-old Madouani to connect them to it with tattoos.
There was a misconception about this type of tattoo. People used to say it was backwards. I thought it is unfair to call this backwards because it is something they don't understand and know nothing about. On the contrary, it used to and still has a big value in the Amazigh culture.
As tattoos took off around the world, some younger Tunisians took up the trend, but without looking back at their own tradition of body art.
My goal is to let the youth know that this is part of their civilization, their country, and their history. And even if they don't want it themselves, they will at least know what it means when they see it on a woman in the street.
Madouani has researched the traditional Tekes tradition of Berber tattoos, collecting designs and learning about the custom of using body art to ward off disease or bad luck through particular symbols on different parts of the body.
And finally on the program, with enhanced sense of keeping fit, an increasing number of Chinese have embraced sports as a lifestyle choice, getting immersed in sports and exercise during the week-long National Day holiday. In China's capital, Beijing, many water skiing lovers seize the best season to enjoy the pleasure of doing water sport before the weather gets cold. During this year's holiday, a Spartan race was held in the suburbs of Beijing for teenage boys and girls, as Chinese families are attaching greater significance to the fitness of their children. To encourage citizens to do sports and exercise more, sports venues and facilities in many provinces, including Jiangsu, Anhui and Yunnan, were open to public for free or with cheaper tickets than usual during the holiday. That's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Bye for now.